Hi there, I'm Douglas, Senior Product Expert here at Favro.
And I'm Patrick, founder and CEO. And today we will show you how you can level up your asset pipelines using Favro. So, why is this interesting? Well, most studios are managing their art pipelines by having a large pile of tickets, typically in Jira. And what you can do is to move from that, very traditional, old-fashioned way of doing it into a much more flow-based way of working in Favro. And doing this comes with 5 quite significant benefits to your studio. So the first thing is simply not having to manage those piles of tickets. One single asset can typically become a ton of Jira tickets, or if it's another tool. Versus in Favro, it's one single Favro card, but which is going through several workflows instead that you only have to set up once, and you can easily update as you develop your pipelines. And it also comes with a lot of other benefits that we will show you today. Secondly, this makes it much more collaborative in how you work around this. So you're getting away from the problem that you're throwing tickets at each other. Instead, you're really collaborating, on the asset, and you're having conversations and maybe even fights about the right things, the things that really makes the quality. The third really important benefit is that you will be moving from tracking, task tickets into really tracking the progress of the asset. What I mean by this is that it's very easy that you get into a situation where maybe everyone has done their ticket. So you're like, well, we're done, right? But then when you review the asset, you realize, no, it's a ton of rework to do here. We're really only 50% done. So you're constantly off in terms of your tracking. And with Favro and a much more what we call product-oriented way of tracking, you're actually much more accurate in your tracking and the real progress towards making something great. The third reason why this is so valuable is that it gives you the metrics and the visibility and basically the tools to shorten your pipelines. Very often we think about art pipelines as very linear, and they are linear by nature, but they're not as linear as people often think. There's more overlap than you might think, and many tools are really creating more of a linearity between the different steps of an art pipeline than is necessary. With Favro, it's very easy to do a lot of the craft steps in parallel and to get visibility on exactly how this works, how long it takes, and how you can improve and basically shorten the lead time, for your pipelines. Now, finally, and this is a very important one because this is one of the biggest problems in the whole game industry, and that's estimates for doing your capacity planning. So traditionally, the way that teams are doing this is that they breaking down the asset into all these small items, and then the team has to put in estimates themselves. No one likes to do that, and that aggregates up to an estimate, and then you're using that. That gives you a very specific estimate, and that might seem like now you have a very good precision. But the problem is that it's a false sense of precision. And if you instead are using what's called throughput metrics, you can get a much, much higher accuracy. So you can much more accurately estimate, what assets are going to be done at what release and what does the project look like and stuff like that. And finally, before we jumping into showing you all the details here, the approach that we're showing you today, which you also can get as a template in Favro, is very scalable. So you can do a more lightweight version of this if you're, for example, in the studio, and we're happy to jump on a call and show you that. But if you set up in this way, this can scale into the biggest productions that are really out there. So with that said, and those 5 benefits, let's jump into it and see what we got here in our template.
All right. So we have this art production collection with starting with the art asset backlog, in which we of course have our assets broken down into specific asset types. We have the environment and weapons, and of course our definition of done that we can choose from different stages going along. Of course, our priority, our estimated ideal days, our craft specifically assigned to different areas. And of course, we even have an automation set up when we assign an asset to a specific craft. That asset will jump into the specific craft board where the team members can start working on it. Next, we have the craft progress. Now here we can see when these cards have been added to the specific craft boards. So right now we just added into VFX board, and right now it will start to work on it from their side. If we take a look at other examples, we can see they're being worked on through multiple teams in their crafts working on these assets. Next, we have the asset type. Of course, different type of assets that we can choose from. And moving along, we have the Team Alpha, our asset production board. So that's basically your sprint board on which these assets will go through. The sprints of themselves, we can specify on which exactly we're going to work on. We're going to plan it a bit ahead. Our owners, members, and of course, tags.
And before moving on, I want to call out one alternative to this setup if you have a very large production. Instead of having one single Favro board for your asset backlog, you can have one board per asset type. And then you would do this instead of having the column here called asset type. So the setup we're showing here right now is good up to a certain size. And then if you want this to be a little bit more, let's say, modular, and that comes with some benefits, you can basically do one board per asset type. So in a AAA production, that might be, roughly 10 or so, boards. Let's move on to the team.
All right. So on the right side, we have the Team Alpha asset production. There's sprint board where they go through each of their different statuses. Now, easily from here, we can take up one of our assets from the backlog and simply drag and drop it into the asset production board. From here, the team will start work on it, going through those different statuses. Now, when we reach the in review stage, an automation will hit and will add this card into the art director review workflow that we have here. And of course, we can find our card here, which will go through the process of the art director reviewing it and approving or not approving and informing that some rework is needed.
And Dovidas, what I think we should show here is if you just open the automations in that team's workflow. So setting up these automations that we're showing now, that can be done by the manager who is responsible for this team.
Exactly. As simple as that, by selecting few of the options and going through the different changes that you would like to make, automations can be set right here in a few minutes without any need of IT assistance.
Okay, let's talk about the crafts. So as you can see here in our asset backlog, we have crafts called out, and if you click here, as we showed before, you will see that you can select the crafts that are needed here. And what happens then is we have another automation automatically adding these to workflow for each craft. And we have an overview where we can see what's going on across all of these crafts. So we're going to look at that overview right now. And here you can see each of these crafts, and these assets will go through the craft workflow, and these can look different across different crafts. And one of the things we have here is that when it reaches review, again, we use one of those automations, and it automatically gets assigned to the craft lead for a sign-off here. If we go back to the previous view in our template that you can use in our art production here, if we here close the team view for the Team Alpha, you will see that below we actually also have the crafts here. So the total view we're looking at here in this collection, that is good for example, a producer, scrum master, any kind of manager person, managing this. But what we would recommend that you do is that you also create a collection where you don't have these crafts here. You simply just have your backlog and the team board, or maybe just the team board, to keep it as simplified as possible. Since in Favro, cards can be in multiple boards, but also boards can be in multiple collections. It's very easy to create several views depending on who the view is intended for using collections.
And lastly, let's take a look at one more collection in this template. And that's the specific craft collection, where the team members who are working on the craft can see a better overview of what exactly they would need to accomplish. They're having their craft board and dashboard with some detailed metrics, what could be important for them to look at. For example, which card has recently been updated, how many cards we have for specific sprints, and so on. So having a better overview for each specific craft that they're assigned to.
Okay, and now finally, the benefit of throughput metrics, so you can get much better accuracy. We're going to look at an example of a control chart. So in Favro, with the Favro dashboards, you can get one of these control charts for every board that you have. So that can be the Kanban you were using for your team, your cross-functional team here. So you can track how long does it typically do for us to do an asset, or if it's features, typically for a feature. But you can also pull these on how long does it typically take for us to do a certain craft. So the way you read this chart, all these green dots are basically the data points. We have 13 cards that's been going through this workflow here. And you will see that there on the top, it calls out 13 cards. And the number that you're really interested in here is the median or the average, but I normally use the median. So as you can see here, the median is 4 days. So what you do here when you do your estimations is that you use that number, the 4-day median, as your estimate for how long does it take to make something in this particular workflow. So that might then be, this asset. And if you want to be a little bit more nuanced and a bit more analysis, you can look at this across the different crafts, and you can analyze, where's actually our bottlenecks, how can we be faster, etc. But don't overcomplicate it. One of the things that all the empiric, the science are showing is that you actually need fewer data points over a shorter amount of time than you might think to actually get a very accurate number here on your median that you can use as estimate for your assets. So then when you plan out how many assets of a certain type are we going to be able to do for the next release, for the next milestone, you will actually have much more accurate data. So if you have any questions on this, feel free to ping us. We're happy to jump on a demo, a personalized demo with you and your team. You can use our template. You can just click and get started. Good luck.